Live. Hello. Nice to see you. Elaine Marolakos Edelson here with Astrology Mojo, transformational astrology, and it's more than that, right? You know that. It's about your conscious awareness. It's about spirituality. It's about the inner power that you have that's waiting to be realized. Welcome. Today is Monday and October 7th, and we are going to be 2019. Excuse me. And we're going to be talking about the rest of, not the rest of, but part 3 of Saturn, now direct, moving through the houses. And we're going to touch on 3 houses today, 3 more houses. We've already done 6, and we've got 6 more to go. So come by, say hello to me, and let me know that you're here. Last show, I did not see any movement in the chat room until after I had stopped recording. So I'm not sure what that was about. But come say hello. I'll do my best to respond if I see you. If I don't, please forgive. All right. So I just want to say thank you. Oh, by the way, the humidity is now gone from the air. So I have that flat ironed look. It's my new look. I have to change. I have to change my little Bitmoji. I want to thank England, Colorado, and Poland for joining us. Yes, our reach is growing. Please pass it on. Oh, in case you don't know, I am here on Mondays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, but this week, I'm here today, Monday, but I will be here on Wednesday. I have some appointments on Thursday that I don't want to cut it too close. You know what I'm saying? So I'll be here on Wednesday this week, and that is the 9th or the 10th. Wait a minute. The 10th. Yeah, there it is. So I'm not seeing any activity. I'm not sure what's going on. I'm sure you're there. I'm just going to post a little something to get the thing rolling. Hi. Come say hello to me. There. How's that? Oh, there you are. See, I had to do something. So Christine's here, and I'm so glad. And Leah is here as well. Saturn in natal 5th. Well, today we are talking about Saturn in the 4th house, the 8th house, and the 10th house. Transiting. Now, someone had posted in a response that I didn't get to see till much later, to describe what transits mean. So on Monday, I actually created a little video of Laura Dern's chart, the actress, so you can get an idea of what it looks like. A natal chart is stationary. It is the chart that you were born with. And you can go through progressions, etc., but this is your chart for life. And in a natal chart, when we take a snapshot of the universe, the moment you were born, also based on longitude and latitude, your exact time, what we see is the configuration of the planets in the heavens by way of aspects and angles from the perspective of the Earth at the moment you were born. Isn't that exciting? So there's only one you, and there's only one you chart. Is that a thing? I think it is now. Okay. And when transits happen, you see the planets are always rotating on the elliptical plane around the sun. So, but let's just look at your chart is stationary. And then as the planets rotate, well, I can't go around my hand, but as the planets rotate around your chart, it's called a transit. So that Jupiter moves, literally, it takes approximately 12 months for Jupiter to traverse all of the constellations in our astrological makeup. And that means your chart. So 1 year per sign, literally. So Jupiter will go through 1 house in a year in your chart. Saturn takes 27 to 29 years to go through an entire cycle to get back to the beginning. But while it's moving through different houses, you're feeling the need to express yourself differently. So, hi, Brittany is here as well. Okay, and I hope that makes sense. But here's what I did. Come look at this. Now, you can see, just keep your eye on the top part of the chart. Saturn is a slow-moving planet, and these transits go, I think, through mid-November. When you see the Sun conjuncting Neptune in the 8th house, and way up there, okay? And so this is Laura Dern, the actress Laura Dern's chart. She is a Pisces, an Aquarius sun sign with a Pisces rising, moon in Pisces. Look at all that Pisces in the 1st and 2nd house. So the inner wheel that you're looking at in Laura Dern's chart is her natal chart. This is what she was born with. You see, they are stationary. But the transits happening are by date, so that in October, then we move into September, November, and then we see the Sun in Scorpio, then Mercury retrograde coming up. So that's what a transit looks like as it's rotating around your chart. Does that make sense? It's pretty cool, huh? And then I was able to actually do this technology. That's even cooler to me. Sip of the galaxy, get me going. Okay, so let's get right in. Let's see. Saturn in the 4th house. Now, the 4th house in astrology deals with your inner identity, the feminine parent. In most cases, it's the mom, but in a same-sex household, it could be the more feminine of the parent, the person who has given birth. If you're not raised by a mom and you don't know your mom, that house still represents the maternal parent and your relationship to that parent and your inner identity. Also dealing with real estate, your home, your 4 walls, and sometimes extended family. It depends on the transits that move through that house. Now, with Saturn in the 4th house, this is, Saturn's not an easily defined planet. It deals with karma, and Saturn deals with denial and responsibility, maturity, and really taking that stance of authority. And sometimes it's a little stoic. And in the 4th house, if you're born with Saturn in the 4th house, you have a relationship to one or both of your parents that is very karmic, meaning you've been with them before. Possibly one of them was your grandparent in a previous lifetime. But when Saturn is transiting the 4th house, as it is now in someone's chart out there listening. Saturn transiting the 4th house in Capricorn, which means you have Capricorn based in the 4th house. This and plus Saturn and Neptune, Saturn and Pluto are working together now. They are really digging up the dirt. It's like an archaeological dig. Who are you really? Huh? What? Huh? Really? And and sometimes it's a sobering energy with Saturn in the 4th house, and you feel a little bit deprived of or indebted, or the responsibility is so strong. Your relationships to your family become very protective. You might have to actually care for a parent or a grandparent or an elder. And sometimes you have a mentor that comes into life. It's more in the 11th or 10th house when Saturn, which we'll talk about the 10th house. But when Saturn transits through the 4th house, there's just a feeling of sobriety. Like, what am I going to do with these 4 walls? Should I invest in real estate? Do I need to sell? Is it time to move? Now, when Uranus transits the 4th house, it's always time to move your energy, or sometimes sell. But your relationship as an adult to yourself starts to change, and you start to mature, thinking, what else can I do for me? Who else can I be? And it's a little, sometimes a rude awakening for some people who feel that family is always a responsibility. It's always a burden. Oh, it's always me. It falls on me, So what you can do if Saturn is transiting your 4th house, and this will happen, the transits occur through March of 2020, that while this is happening, it's time to look at the actual structure of your home or your apartment. Does anything need fixing? Is there painting that has to be done? Are you thinking of adding on? Or are you rehabbing a property? Perhaps you have an investment property. And I pulled cards ahead of time for Saturn in the 4th, 8th, and 10th houses. And the card that came up really was perpetual transformation through regeneration in this house. And, ooh, trippy. And so what you see with Saturn in the transiting the 4th house is you can't stop now. Something started a while back. You had plans, and now the rehab is here. Now, it can be a rehab dealing with, as I said, your actual property. Perhaps you're also thinking of investing in real estate for future holdings and to have, something for a rainy day. Hey, Francis is here. Christine says bathroom redo is coming up. Okay, so the part of your house is looking at what do we need? What do we need to rehab this structure physically? Okay, once that's out of the way, then your relationship to the maternal parent takes a turn, and you might actually become the parent to an elder. And sometimes that's not an easy thing. Having buried both of my parents, I know what it's like to leave this world for someone else to leave this world, and you to be in charge of that person or their care when you've had other relationships to them growing up, right? So it's a maturity. You start to become more responsible and say, listen, bygones, right? We need to really respect one another now. As it draws to a close for you, the elder, it needs to be reconciled, reconstructed, different framework in the mind, and to take on that feeling of, okay, I am the mature, responsible one now. I'm going to do my best to have zero regrets. Okay, zero regrets. And what happens is when, because the 4th house deals with the maternal parent, or you as a maternal parent, or it doesn't matter your gender, or you as someone who is setting the stage for the next life. Because karma begins. It doesn't just end in the life that you're in. It also begins in the life that you're in, right? Think about that. So if you have unfinished business, that's a Neptune territory, but it's a Neptune and Saturn are both the karmic planets. But we have Pluto here with Saturn transiting the 4th house for some of you. And that can mean, you really, aside from the structure of your physical environment and fixing something up in order to flip it, sell it, you just live in it more comfortably. It's about you feeling comfortable on the inside on a mature level, like, all right, bygones, but I really need to deal with the effects of this parent or this elder or the relationship that we had so that I don't take it to the next life. Can we be done with the karma? Finny, right? So perpetual transformation doesn't give you a rest sometimes, and you feel like, like the buds are starting to bloom in the southern hemisphere, in the spring, but then you feel like, but I still got to dig out the weeds because Pluto's there. And I really need to come to terms with when I say the word death, people get scared. I'm not talking about your death. I'm talking about an ending. And so when Saturn moves to the 4th house with Pluto in tandem, there's a big ending to your relationship to your feminine parent, and it could be a grandparent. So ponder that, take time, and with perpetual transformation, there's always renewal. So you need to plan some fun in your day so that you don't become overwhelmed. All right, does that make sense? Let me just check here. Hey, Lindsay's here, Taurus. We're talking about, if you're just joining us, we're talking about Saturn direct moving through the houses in transits. So if you have Saturn in your second house in your natal chart, we're not talking about that really. We're talking about where Saturn is now, stationed in Capricorn. And as I showed some people earlier, I'll do it again so you can see. This is actress Laura Dern's chart. And you can see how it's going to start to move in a second because I have it on a loop. That we're going to go through November just on this piece so you can see transiting planets. The inner planets, Venus, Mars, and Mercury, move pretty close to the sun, so they transit faster. And then Jupiter is a little bit slower, but still, it keeps up a pace of constant motion. But then Saturn, Neptune, Pluto, Uranus, they're outer planets and they move a lot slower in a transit and the elliptical around the sun. So, they will last longer in your house, whatever transiting house it's in. So now we're going to move on to the 8th house. Does this make sense? I'm hoping this makes sense for people. Sage says, great advice. Oh, good. I'm glad it helps. Hey, Ronnie's here too. Okay, so now we're talking about Saturn transiting through the 8th house. Okay. And I have a hairdo today that looks like it's been flat ironed. That's Saturn through my my dressing room, flattening me out. All right, now the 8th house. The 8th house is a mixed bag. It really is. And by the way, if you have a chart with nothing in a house, it doesn't mean nothing's going on there. Okay, just so you know. Now, the 8th house deals with joint ventures, joint partnerships, especially dealing with death, sex, taxes, money. Why? Why those random topics put together? Well, don't they get the most attention in your life, right? So who am I sexually? What are my partners like? What's my money doing? How do I save for the future? Am I indebted? Now, the bigger definition of the 8th house is a connection to a spiritual energy. Can be the universe, can be a particular ideology, but also it's your interaction with spirit. Now, if there are some heavy planets natally in the 8th house or transiting the 8th house, there's been some karma with abuse or karma with debt. Now, debt has many definitions, right? If you've taken my VIP program, you know what I'm talking about. Debt can be spiritual. Debt can be financial. Debt can be creative, right? Debt can not just financial. It can be health. And there's actually 9 karmic debts. But Francis asks, which houses am I covering today? Houses 4, 8, and 10 today. And then on Wednesday, I'll be back instead of Thursday, which is my usual day. I will be finishing up the rest. So if you haven't seen them, you can catch them still on Facebook. My first 2 shows about transiting Saturn. And then this week, by the end of the week, we're going to upload more to YouTube. So they'll be there for you. Okay? And please comment on them and subscribe, by the way. Okay, so 8th house, insurance, spiritual connection, your sleeping dreams, financial investments, legacy, estate planning, also the inheritance that you might get. Now, when Saturn transits the 8th house, it's not so much about your legacy, it's about what you've owed other people, this life or another lifetime. And remember, the idea of time off of this planet does not exist. So if you feel like you haven't given, you haven't repaid, you owe, even if you're not aware of it, because Pluto is there, this is a very deep and profound area where you might actually project your karma into the next life and say, well, it's too late. I don't know where they are. They've passed away. I don't know how to reconcile this. it's just going to have to wait. So if you've got Saturn transiting your 8th house, this is when the phone calls come in. Hello, can you please donate to every single charity ever? And then you go robocall again, and you figure out how to block a call on your phone. But at the same time, this is when people come calling for handouts. Now, those handouts might be justified. It's like, well, we let this thing slide in your investments, but at the same time, we need to get caught up. So it might be about consolidating debt. It could, if you've been racking up debt because you're just not paying attention, you don't want to know. You don't want to know about finances. I know, because it's, for some people, they love it. That's not my favorite topic, really, because I believe in abundance, but I also have to be practical, right? As a Capricorn rising, I look at, wow, when Saturn traversed my 8th house, I prayed for a resolution with every financial debt I had, and I got it. But it taught me, you need to start over. We're giving you a pass. Literally, what happened was I was over $10,000 in debt, and this is business debt. And just the feeling of burden, like, how am I ever going to pay this off? So I would work harder just to pay off a little bit. And so I started cleaning up my energy in other areas. Okay, clue. If you've got Saturn transiting the 8th house, when you set boundaries to your spending habits, when you become aware of, make a list of what you spend every day or weekly, so that you are aware of, oh, wow, did I rack up $800 this month in food and household necessities? Like, what are they really necessities? So when you start to become aware of your energy and set boundaries to them, also to others, you cannot give to every single person, right? So with Saturn transiting your 8th house, you might feel like, they have it worse than me. Even if I just give $1, it's like, okay, but, tampon, a little bit. Not so much. And what happened was, as I started to pull in my energy, and as I said before, if you're just joining me or you're new to me, the planets don't make you do anything, right? This is, a cooperation in the cosmos. When the planets make a move, you feel it. When you make a move, it's reflected by way of aspects and angles in astrology. So ultimately, astrology tells you what time it is. And if it's time to shore up your resources with Saturn transiting the 8th house, or to recognize, if you were born with Saturn in the 8th house, why you feel like money is always an issue. Why are you always in debt? What is the debt? Is it financial? Is it romantic? Is it creative? Is it spiritual? So where are you not allowing flow? That's the bigger key. So when I looked at when Saturn was transiting my 8th house, and I knew it was coming, and I braced myself for impact, and sure enough, phones, ringing, out of the blue. Your unconscious state is all shades of blue. Look behind me, right? So what happened over time was that because I was not fully aware of how I was spending, and I'm not an extravagant person, but these were business expenses. And I thought, I can't get caught up. I'm out of breath. So I turned to other areas in my life, and I started setting boundaries without, people would call at all hours, and I would just like, sure, you need my help? Sure. It's like, no, you schedule time. You have an appointment with me, and there is an exchange of value. And that is a businesswoman's point of view. And so the work that I do here and giving this information, this is my karmic information for the public so that it's free of charge. So benefit by it, use it, because, once the show ends and I'm off to work, I'm doing work for pay. And that was my boundary at the time. So what happened was, within the 2.5 years that Saturn transited my 8th house, I got a notification in the mail, in my P.O. box, my business box. And I had to read it 3-4 times and then show it to my husband. I lifted up the paper, basically, and I was like, does this say what I think it says? And it says, I was absolved of guilt. I was absolved of debt. I was absolved. Done. And my husband ran to his P.O. box and said, maybe I got the same letter from the bank. Nobody knows how it happened, but it did. And so I was, they relinquished the debt. Shore up areas in other parts of your life where you believe you have debt, where you are in a deficit of energy, start meditating more, start putting more energy into percentages. What you give, you get back. Not calculated like I'm only going to give to 3 people for Christmas. I'm not talking like that. I'm talking about how can you give to yourself as much as you give to others without the guilt, without that feeling of remorse or going into denial over, I don't see, I'm just using my charge card until they tell me I can't use it anymore. Don't do that. So it could be a time of consolidating debt, managing your money, creating an estate, planning, creating insurance plan, like looking at what's the best kind of insurance to get, what can you do to really help yourself, excuse me, to move out of that feeling of, I don't know, I'm at the beck and call, I'm at the mercy of, okay? We don't want to do that. So the card that I pulled, very interesting, 2 cards, 2 decks that I pulled was why. The question was why. Why are you in this place right now? What is the question that you need to be asking every time you give of your energy, that you give sexually to someone that you don't want to be giving to? Why? That you give money when you don't really want to be giving. And I'm not talking paying your bills. I'm talking like you just donate because it makes me a better person. It's good karma. Why are you giving? Is it a cause near and dear to your heart? Great. If it's just because you feel guilty, guilt is not a healthy motivator, okay? And so the remedy card is actually stillness. So before you start to spend your money, use your credit cards, or spend time with people that drain you, in which you don't have a boundary, it's a really good question to ask. Why? Then become still and connect through meditation to your universe. The answers await. They're there for you. All right, does that make sense? I'm going to move on to Saturn in the 10th. Ronnie says, is it more important to know where transits are in your natal chart or related to sun signs? I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understand the question. Is it more important to know where transits are in your natal chart or related to sun signs? Do you mean an angle to a sun sign? Is that what you mean? Transits in and of themselves, when they move through different houses and they connect or conjunct or make an angle or aspect to other planets, create a more specific type of energy that you are undergoing. Remember, the planets aren't doing it to you. It's like a lab report. You get a blood test and the doctor looks at the lab and says, oh yeah, your vitamin D levels are a little low, or, it's not that the vitamin D did it to you or the blood did it to you. It's the way you live, think, and create, right? So when you look at where the transits are, that's one definition. Oh, it's in the 3rd house, it's in the 5th house, it's in the 7th house. That gives you a clue as to what time it is for you. Is it time to focus on that? Okay? And then if it comes into contact with another house, within 4 to 8 degrees, a conjunction it's called, then that intensifies the energy that you are undergoing, not because the planets did it to you. Okay? Please understand that. I'm begging you. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question? Also, let me know. I see Saturn's transiting. Okay, so, you were born with Saturn in one house. And so when I talked about Saturn in the 7th house the other day, that gave a somewhat of a definition. But that it's transiting the 8th house is what we're talking about today. Okay. And if folks want to hear about something specific regarding astrology or conscious awareness or methods to use to really connect to spirit, to divine energy, to this self-empowerment, let me know, and I'm happy to talk about these things. A free place to find your transits? I don't know. That you would have to check out in the interwebs. And you want to make sure that you understand that there are 12 systems, actually more like 25, but 12 basic systems that people use when calculating charts in automatic those free places that you get. So they're not always accurate. So you have to be careful. Some use Placidus, some use Coke, some use, that's Koch, some use Equal House, that's what I use. Some use, Vedic, but that's a whole different system. So you could do different house systems. If you get the choice to do a house system, go for Equal. That's what I say, because Placidus does not apply to the whole of the earth. Okay. Is one more personal than the other? Ronnie asks. Well, that's not really the question. Here's the question. Which one is more relevant now? Saturn in your natal house, wherever it is, in yours at 7th, is always relevant because that's how you interact with a partner. Saturn transiting shows you what's happening now that you need to deal with. Make sense? All right, now Saturn in the 10th house. The 10th house deals with the masculine parent and career, notoriety, your life direction. Now, the masculine parent, it can be dad. If you come from same-sex household, it can be the more ambitious, the more paternal energy of the dad vibe. It can also deal with coworkers and employers or employees, depending on if you run your own business. And so Saturn moving through this house, okay, this takes on a completely different vibe than the other houses. And I kind of like Saturn here because this is a natural placement for Saturn. This is the house that Saturn rules in the general charts. And so it takes on this authority, like, you're standing there with a cape flying behind you, But Edna May would say, no capes. The Incredibles. And aren't you incredible? If you've got Saturn transiting your 10th house, or if you have Saturn natally in your 10th house, you have grown up with a purpose and ambition. And remember, karma is not good or bad, okay? So when Saturn is transiting your 10th house, we're looking at, are you ready to take on some more responsibility? Because you can, and the public is waiting. We're waiting. So it's almost like the reluctant superhero. And Saturn feels like there's a whole lot more responsibility. I just wanted to be behind the curtain. But, like the Wizard of Oz is like, just pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. But now the curtain gets pulled back, and here you are. What would you like to say to us, Saturn transiting the 10th house? I know it feels like you have to work more. Saturn in the 6th house, where it does deal with day-to-day work and productivity, you feel overwhelmed. Saturn in the 10th house, it's like, okay, we're about to hand you the keys. What castle do you want? Which city would you like? What's your ambition? What's your intention? And you may be thinking, I'm ready to retire. Okay, great. So retire, but you're just going to sit there. If you've just had a long, illustrious career, you're just going to sit down and watch television? I don't think so. Tie on an apron and bake? No, not unless you start to bake and then you realize I could create my own food network. That's where it's going to go. So Saturn is always looking to serve the public. That's the energy. Imagine that you go to a party and you meet Saturn. Saturn shows up in a tie and a suit, or, the business suit with the functional heels, right? That you don't get at DSW. No, those, yeah. They have cushioned inner soles. And Saturn says, I just want to let loose. And that's when they start eating carbs and having a drink or two, or just relaxing. And so to let your hair down, Saturn doesn't allow it. Tight buns, I'm talking about the hair. Mars would have tight buns in the other direction. But Saturn at a party, it's like, hey, so, what do you do for work? Oh, that's fascinating. Really? Is there any way I can learn more about that and maybe invest in it, and perhaps maybe I'll start my own business, or maybe I'll just keep giving my information after retirement by way of mentoring. That's how an elder can give back. So Saturn takes on an elder role, an authority role, transiting through the 10th house. Whether you like it or not, people want your information. They want to know what you've done, how you got there. And you might be thinking, me, I haven't written a book. I'm not famous. I just worked really hard. And now they want to reward you with a gold watch. And you say, yeah, I don't even care what time it is. It's time for me to go home and have a snack. So I don't want the watch. So how can you then give back? Vacations are a strange concept to you if you were born with Saturn in the 10th house. Yeah, vacation? Okay, well, let me just set up a few business meetings that I can do via Zoom on vacation. And your family's going, no, that's not what we're talking about. This might feel overwhelming, Saturn transiting through the 10th house, that suddenly something fell on your shoulders. Somebody else retired and handed you the keys, or you were, by default of how responsible you are, or just you were the person that they happened to see first. It's like, you, we want you. And it can be like a tough act to follow. You have to live up to the next responsible level. It's like, it's like being a stand-up comic and opening for Jim Gaffigan or Brian Regan or Kathleen Madigan. You go, oh man, I better do this right. So take it as a sign that you can use technology to bridge the gap. Remember, Pluto is transiting with you and you're thinking, I want to retire, and the world is saying, no, we need you. So think of other ways that you can serve, but not at the sake of yourself. Does this make sense? Saturn transiting the 10th house. And also here, you know what I'm going to do? If you don't know what your chart looks like, here is a free chart for you. You can get your birth chart here, and you can see where Saturn is natally, and then look at the glyphs and say, oh, this is what Capricorn looks like. Saturn rules Capricorn. Saturn is in Capricorn right now. Pluto is in Capricorn. So you can see in your mind, in your natal chart, it won't show you the transit, but it'll show you your natal chart, and you'll say, oh, that's where Capricorn is, ruling the 8th house, ruling the 6th house, ruling the 5th house, ruling the 3rd house. So Saturn is now transiting that sector of your world. And then listen to the shows that I've done, and then you can get a better idea of where and what and how your focus ought to be. Let's see. Okay. So Saturn transiting the 10th house, and when I talk about Saturn, I really feel dour, stoic, like just get to the point. No procrastinating allowed, no denial allowed, just, no singing songs, just get there, just do the work. Maybe it's my Capricorn rising talking to me. The card that I pulled for Saturn transiting the 10th house is Fork in the Road. How apropos. Some of you are thinking of retiring. Some of you are thinking of setting up a different type of business, of conducting business differently, because now you've had so much responsibility throughout life and time, throughout your entire career as whatever you've been, even if you've never had a day job and you've been at home raising children. That's been your job, right? So now, how do you get more involved with your own ambition, with your own intentions? The fork in the road is saying, well, you have a choice to make. So then the second card I pulled for the solution was your mind. Yep. So what do you want to do? You want to think. You want to think about, what are the ramifications if I take this road? If I travel down road A, what's it going to be like versus traveling down road B? Now, anybody who ever just cuts off a thing, that's a Scorpio energy. That's a Pluto energy. And remember, Saturn and Pluto are transiting together. So you might think, yeah, I'm done. Especially if you're in a numerological 9-year, even a 3-year, you're like, well, a 2-year, It's always said in a 2-year, you never want to get more than 100 business cards because you keep changing how it looks. That's true of a 3rd year, number 3 year in numerology. But in a 9-year with a Capricorn on your, Saturn and Pluto and Capricorn transiting your 10th house, yeah, you're so done. But what are you done with? You want to think about that. You want to come to the fork in your road and say, I think I'm ready for, but then you feel guilty taking a break. But then we use our mind to go a little bit deeper. Well, you go through all the head casing, all the justification. I worked really hard and I deserve it and I don't, blah. It's bullshit. You know what? If you know who you are, you know that you're a kind, giving, generous person, right? You're not a loving person. That's a verb. You are love. You are pure conscious love. And when you look at yourself, be truthful, be honest. Think about what your mind has been convincing you of. Oh, you haven't done enough. It's not, you haven't finished, or you're so tired, but you owe it to somebody. You know, that feeling of responsibility comes through big time with Saturn transiting houses, especially the 10th house. It's like, who do I owe now? And people start calling in favors. Constituents, if you were in the political arena. Christine asks, what is the difference between a progressive chart or a transiting chart? Okay, so a progressive chart is, there's a calculation that's very simple. For every day you've been alive, look at a calendar. Look at a calendar from month to month. The date of your birth to today. Just count how many days there are. That is your progressed sun sign. And there are decadents. That means the first 10 degrees of that sun sign, the second, the middle 10 degrees, and then the third 10 degrees. And each one portends something different for your evolution. So a progressed sign is what your chart has progressed to now, even though you still have a natal chart. It progresses over time, 1 day per year. 1 day per year. So if you were born May 3rd, and I think I'm a progressed Cancer now. So I'm focused on writing and healing and nurturing and baking. I haven't stopped cooking, honest to goodness. I bake every single day. I cook every single day. Keto, okay? And I'm taking old-time recipes that were passed down in my family, big bakers in my family, and I'm translating everything to keto. No sugar, I'm finding the right sweetener that does not raise blood sugar. I'm finding things that don't have aftertastes. I'm finding what's the combination for that best buttery biscuit that only has 1 carb? Well, I've done it. Yeah. I'll give you the recipe if you want it. Anyway, so the transit is what's happening over your natal chart consistently, daily, over time, every day. Oh, now Saturn's here. Oh, now Saturn's there. The closer planets, the inner planets they're called, that's Mercury, Venus, and Mars, they travel pretty fast in the universe. So if you were to look up in the sky at night, we live in a dark sky community here in Sedona, so we're very blessed. I'm so happy that if you look up, you can go, there's Jupiter. And you know that right now Jupiter is in Sagittarius, and on December 4th it moves into Capricorn. Ooh, lucky me and all the other Capricorn sun, rising, and moon signs. And those born with Jupiter in Capricorn. So then you'll know, okay, that's where it is in the sky. If I had an image of my natal chart, then I would see where Jupiter was transiting in my chart. Does that make sense? Progressed is day for year. So it gives you the theme of your next evolution. And transits are more daily, but you can go up to 3 months. We do have transit reports that we can set up for you for a nominal fee. And but right now, looking at where your transits are shows you what your evolutionary focus is. The progressive is for up to 10 years at a time. I hope that answers your question. Okay. Well, let's use the mind. Saturn transiting the 10th house. Let's be still. Saturn transiting the 8th house and get really clear on where your debt is. And then perpetual transformation for Saturn transiting the 4th house, right? So we have all these awesome suggestions from the universe, how to help you go to the next level of you. All right, we'll be back on Wednesday this week instead of Thursday. Back on Wednesday to help you with the last 3 Saturn transit planets, houses 5, 9, and 11. I'll be back on Wednesday at 10. I hope. How is everyone doing, by the way, before I just shuffle off to Buffalo? And I will pull a card for everyone who is here and listening in a replay. If you're listening in a replay, I hope that you find this helpful. Please comment below and let me know your thoughts. And if there's something you would like me to do a show on regarding astrology or the signs, the planets, the moon signs, the sun signs, the rising signs, you let me know. And I'm just going to pull a card for everyone here today, getting information on how to best handle the Saturn transit now that it's direct. What's an overall, I'm asking universal, angels, light beings, energy workers across all times and dimensions. What's the best way to handle this Saturn direct energy? Oh, well, drop the mic. Gratitude. Yeah, because with gratitude comes a whole lot of energy that says, I am responsible, Saturn, for all of my karma, Saturn, and all that I put into the world with boundaries, Saturn, and am no longer in denial, Saturn, and therefore am grateful, Saturn, of my life. There, we're done. How's that? Ta-da! Okay, I'll be back on Wednesday. Be well.